Welcome, my beautiful friend. This is a Time to Care the Caregivers podcast. I'm Isabel Melgarejo, your host. And today we have Natalie Contorno here with us. She's a licensed health insurance agent and a certified financial fiduciary that specializes in Medicare, long term care planning. She holds the long term care professional designation as and is certified by the National Association of Registered Social Security Analysts as a registered Social Security analyst. She helps people understand how Medicare, Social Security, and long term care work, all of those together. So, probably you work with one or the other, but she brings all the magic into one place. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited because I think for the most part, we have people talking about either Medicare or Social Security or financial advice. Like we have everything on the sides, but you bring everything together. So, how did your journey start?
Yes, so that is a great question. At a very young age, I was always into wellness, nutrition, preventative care. And when I obtained my license, my life and health insurance license in 2018, it really brought everything together. And so I said, well, I'm taking great care of my health, my wellness, everything. And now I get to learn about insurance. And wow, this is going to bring the picture together. And not only that, a personal story of mine, my mom at a very young age, the mail that she would receive, her job applications, you name it, anything that she had to read, I had to help her understand that information because she wasn't really that great at reading. And so fast forward to my early 20s, my parents went through a divorce. They were married for 25 years. So again, I had to read all of this information that she was receiving. And this was right around 2008 when we had the housing market crash and all of that. So unfortunately, we lost our family home to a foreclosure and it was devastating. And I remember at that time, I don't think anyone really plans for these types of events to happen, but they do happen. And the most important thing to have is a plan in place. And what are the next steps, right? Or what are the steps if something is like this is going to happen? So fast forward to now, it was about a couple of years ago, and my mom had questions about Social Security. And that is what really started the process of me obtaining my RSSA designation. So that really started to bring this picture together and what I do today to help individuals and families in our community to understand whatever they're going through that I can fit in and help provide them with guidance.
It's fascinating that how you've built everything in terms of well being, um, because everything links together. So, what is a common question that your clients bring to you, and what do you answer to that question?
A lot of the questions that I get, and it could be depending on their insurance needs, right? Sometimes they just have questions about Medicare is confusing. I need to understand Medicare. What are my options? A lot of the times we don't get questions, or I don't receive questions about what Medicare does not cover. So I ensure that those individuals understand what Medicare does not cover. And I typically get questions on how do I apply for Medicare, which that's through Social Security Administration.gov, right? And so when you apply for Medicare, you're also applying for your retirement benefits, which is Social Security. So those go hand in hand.
So, I'm guessing the big question is the questions that are never asked. What are some things that you recommend people thinking? Because majority of us, we don't read everything, all the small letter. So how can we, when going through these processes and trying to understand very complex, or at least for me, it is very complex understanding insurance. And I'm pretty sure that it is very complex for a lot of people because you get like 10 pages with font -2 to read. And then there are a lot of terms that are not widely common or that people might not understand. What are some good ways in which we can just go through this process and understand besides calling you?
Right. That's important. And I always say you know, you start with your family history. And what I mean by that is that we all have parents, right? They may not be here today with us, but we remember what it was like when they had to experience, going and applying or getting their health insurance coverage or Medicare. A lot of the times when I'm talking to people and I'm explaining something to them, they're like, now it's making sense because I helped my mom or my dad with this. Right. And then also you have to look at your family health history, right? A lot of those things are going to start to create this picture for you where you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to have questions or this is what I'm going to have to plan on. And I always say you do shop around for insurance agents, right? Because you want to make sure until you make a decision on whatever that may be, whether it's your Medicare, health insurance, long term care insurance, your retirement planning, that you can shop around and get advice from these individuals that are professionals. And from there, you're going to, there's no rush to make a decision on something, right? Now, if you wait to the last minute to plan, there is a little bit of pressure there, but you want to give yourself time where you start to get information and then you can make a decision. And whoever that professional may be that helped you, then you can ultimately go and you can decide, right? Because you want to make sure that that person has your best interest in mind and they're giving you the information not just to, of course, get paid, right? But also that they're going to be your individual that you go to for the rest of your life, right? You call your agent, I know this is the person I can count on, I can depend on, that they're going to give me what I need. And so a lot of the times from my angle and my approach, it's a very holistic approach, right? Your Medicare is not just a single decision. It impacts your Social Security. It's going to impact your healthcare costs. It's going to impact your retirement benefits, right? And so if you can speak to someone that is able to give you the full picture and you can be able to sleep at night knowing that you have a trusted professional that has your back, that's really the best approach to take. So, like I said, there's a lot of information, but you also have to do your homework and figure out what it is that I need help on, and then shop and find and get information and do your research. And then you'll be able to eventually piece together the information that you.
Yeah. So, how insurance will impact your Medicare and like, how do they impact each other?
Right. So, one thing with Medicare is that a lot of the times there's a lot of information out there. But what's important with not just Medicare, but our health insurance, it's one, the cost to have it and then the cost to use it. That's with all of these insurance products, the cost to have it and the cost to use it. And then also every year, these numbers change. IRMA changes, which is income related monthly adjustment amount. So we have to make sure that when we have a good idea of what our IRMA is going to be, right? And a lot of times this is not talked about, but it's important because you have to plan for that. And IRMA is based off of not today, but 2 years ago. So,
Mm.
I always say this, if you are working with an insurance agent and you also, and this is one thing that I always ask, do you have a financial advisor that you work with? Do you have a CPA? Do you have a tax advisor? Because they're also going to be able to piece together that information and give you the full picture of everything. And if you don't, then, there's also professionals that I can recommend to the individuals that I help. But our healthcare costs are extremely important, and it's something to plan for, especially as you're reaching your, retirement years.
One of the things that I find difficult is you have all these professionals with their own expertise. And I think one of the things that I really like about you is that I can find with you not just one expertise, I can find like you're very broad in what your expertise is. You cover different topics. But when I come and talk about, hey, I have these things going on, I want to get a new insurance, and then I'm gonna bring my CPA or a tax advisor. Sometimes they're very protective and they want to do business either with the people that they know or don't want to talk about it because that's like they only want to talk about their expertise, not about other things that might impact that part of their business. So, what are some ways in which you can approach different experts and make it not like so confrontational?
Yes, that's a great question. And I always say that the there you're usually connected with, in this beautiful way, people that are going to be able to understand that they're putting their client's best interest first. It always comes down to the client's needs and their best interest. And it's important to have, these different professionals that you trust, right? Because if I'm going to refer one of my clients to, say, an elder law attorney or a CPA, this is someone that I trust and someone that I know that they know what they're talking about, right? And that takes time to build that trust, right? So if and usually, it's always comes down to the client, right? Because the client's either going to say, oh, yes, I'll definitely, love to be able to connect you with my tax advisor or financial advisor, or sometimes they may not, but ultimately it always comes down to the client.
I've had bad experiences in the past in which I do something and they tell me, oh, that was a terrible idea. And then it's like, who do I trust? You're telling me someone told me this was a great idea. I did the research and now you're telling me it is a terrible idea. How do you pair those? Are there ways to just remove the noise and decide for yourself kind of thing?
I, I say it goes down to, it just really comes down to trust, right? Like our clients come to us because they trust us. They wanted us to help them because we have built that trust. And it takes, several meetings together, right? And I also say the same thing with, other professionals, right? If I'm going to recommend someone, then I know that I've done my research. I've met with them several times. I've heard great feedback in the community. And that's really important because reputation is everything, right? And I am
Mhm.
a part of BNI, which is Business Networking International. So, we're connected with individuals that are professionals that you can rely on, that you've built these relationships with. So that helps too. And then I also have individuals that are not a part of any type of organization that I just met and I heard great things about them. And then I met with them several times. So it removes the noise. But even us as professionals, we have to do our research and then kind of figure out, okay, is this a yes or is this a no? And then for me, also, if I'm sitting with someone and I say, Listen, for example, if they are in a high IRMA bracket, which there are 5 tiers, and say they're in their highest, they're more than likely working with a financial advisor. There's someone that may be helping them. But if, for one of my questions, if I'm going through fact finding and I'm saying, your IRMA is high. What did you do 2 years ago? Maybe they have CDs. Maybe they have capital gains. Who knows? And if they're not working with someone, then I can say, okay, I suggest these individuals. And maybe if they are working with someone, then it would be a great opportunity for me to connect with their representative that helps them. There is a lot of noise, and I say ultimately whether the noise is good or the noise is bad, I kind of tune it out and I try to make the best decision, and usually we know, right? Deep down inside.
Yeah. So going back to insurance, Medicare, what are long-term care? What are the differences between them and how do they complement? Well, first let's go with what are the differences and then we'll go how they complement each other.
Yes. So every year, which I always explain this when I'm sitting down with someone, is that Medicare releases it's called Medicare and You Handbook. So if we look on the internet today, there's one for 2026. So once all the information for 2027 is released, there will be a new one. It's on the internet. You can download a copy. Usually they're sent out sometimes, in October. But when someone is aging in to Medicare, right, 65, they're going to receive that copy. If they haven't received a copy, they can receive that, or they can download it on the internet. But Medicare is designed to cover your Part A, which is hospital insurance, and then Part B, which is your medical insurance. So your Part A is your inpatient care, and your Part B is your outpatient services. So in that handbook, it also goes over what Medicare does not cover. And one of the items that are listed is long term care, specifically custodial care. And so knowing that and having a plan in place to protect your assets in the event if you need some type of long term care, because Medicare is only going to cover X amount of days. And then after that, there has to be a plan in place. There's usually 3 options for someone. They can self fund, so self pay with their own investments or whatever they have saved for retirement, or they have some type of long term care insurance plan in place. The long term care insurance plan is not designed to cover the entire cost of your long-term care needs, but it's going to help significantly with the percentage of those costs. Then the third option is spending down your assets and go through the whole qualification process for Medicaid. And that can take time, right? That process, if it comes down to that, it's not instant, right? You don't, okay, I can go ahead and apply for Medicaid and I'll get approved the next day. No, it can take time. It can take months. And so during that time, you've also got to come up with a way of how am I going to fund my long term. So it's having that plan in place to understand that Medicare does not cover everything. Original Medicare in itself is not designed to cover all your needs, right? Because once somebody is aging into Medicare and okay, they have options, right? You still need to cover that 20% from that Part B, right? So you have that understanding the original Medicare, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, how you can get additional coverage for your Medicare. But then also, after X amount of days, in the event of some long-term care needs, you have to have a plan in place. And knowing out of those 3 options for long-term care, which one, which options are you going to plan that you want to fit in for, right? And even if you have all the money in the world, right? I say then, okay, still have a plan in place, right? Because here's an important question, and it's a hard question, but it starts to really uncover, okay, the next step. Which asset do you want to liquidate first? And when you get asked that question, then it starts to really put things in place where it's now this almost feels real. Like I well, I don't want to, right? So those are
Yeah,
ultimately the differences. Yeah.
those are tough questions, especially if you have never thought about those before. So, how do you like what are good questions people can come and ask you or any other professional? Like, what should they have in mind when meeting and planning to get Medicare, long term care?
Yes. So for long-term care specifically, if you and I always say this, if you have a family member that you know that has experienced some type of dementia or some type of family history where you know that they were in whether it's a nursing home, assisted living, maybe they had some type of home health care, who knows? But then usually those individuals, they understand that they really do need to have a long-term care insurance policy because they had a family member or a relative or someone that they know, even maybe a friend, right, that went through this experience. And what are their options, right? Because sometimes long term care may not be for everyone. There are short term care insurance plans, right? That may be an option. For Medicare specifically, right? A lot of the times it may be either they're turning 65 or they're still working and they're not ready to, well, they need to understand there's a lot of questions, right, from Medicare because you don't want to miss this, but at least knowing when they plan to retire from work and what are their options, right? I say when you're turning 65, regardless if you're still working or not, that still meet with somebody, right? There are individuals that will just go through a general, including myself, a general Medicare overview where we're not talking about plans or products or anything like that, pricing. We're specifically talking about Medicare, right? And so just getting an understanding of what Medicare is, how all getting all your questions out of the way. And then also with Social Security, understanding the rules because they change, right? So when is your full retirement age? Do you want to collect early or do you want to delay, right? Or especially, this is a common question that I do not receive very often or something that's not planned for. But if you're married and you're making any decision about Medicare, Social Security, that it is a decision together and that you're planning for it together because a lot of the times people are not, a question that they don't have is the spousal benefits or the widow or widower benefits. In the event if the spouse passes away, what is the plan? Because usually what happens is that there may not be a plan in place until it happens. And then it takes time to start getting everything together because now we're dealing with our spouse, they've passed away. So we're dealing with a whole nother world of outside of what we need to make sure we take care of. There's also our emotions that are running high.
Yeah, those times in which you have high emotions and on top of that you have to make a difficult decision. You don't want to put be yourself in that place. So, yeah, where can people reach out to you, connect with you and learn more about you?
Yes. So my website is Alpha Lee. That's Lee. So two E's, insurance.com. I post blogs bi-weekly, and usually this is from long-term care insurance, Social Security, Medicare. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram. But I say, I am always available just to answer questions about anything that someone may have, right? Whether it's Social Security, Medicare, long term care insurance, or just insurance products, right? And So yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was very educational and great for everybody to know, like, what are the options. If you are listening to these out there, know that Natalie is a good place to connect and learn about everything in one place. So go check her out. Hey, just for you to know, the content presented in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organizations or sponsors. If you need additional advice, please contact the right partner for you.